Alrighty, we'll go ahead and get started. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're joining from, and welcome to today's webinar presented by InfoTrust. Thank you so much for joining to learn more about the value of integrating your analytics platform with your CRM and some best practices for how we approach this. First, before we start off, just a couple housekeeping items. We are recording this webinar. We will send out the recording, the deck afterwards. Just make sure that you signed up through our website. It should be in the next couple of days, maybe early next week, we'll send that out. Also, we've left hopefully some time at the end for Q&A, but of course, if you have questions, comments, anything you want to share throughout the webinar, feel free to use the questions panel or the chat panel within the GoToWebinar interface, and my team will either respond directly there or we can take them as they come. I'll try to monitor that myself as well. And then if you have any additional questions or want to engage afterwards for more, feel free to check out my email at the very end or reach out to us on our website. If there's any audio issues or screen share issues, feel free to also drop a note in the chat panel or questions panel. We'll try to resolve those as we go. But there will be a few polls for some interactions sprinkled throughout as well. But yeah, I think we're about ready to get started. First speaking, my name is Amin Shaki. I'm the head of growth at InfoTrust. I've been with InfoTrust for a number of years now and have worked in our Cincinnati headquarters, also in our Dubai office in the Middle East, and currently in our Chicago office as well. And I've worked across multiple different verticals, both on the measurement strategy to technical implementation, testing, validation, as well as analysis and activation of data, kind of across the entire journey with analytics and online measurement. Primarily worked with large multi-brand, complex CPG and retailer organizations as well. So have some experience in this space, I'll say, and one of my favorite topics is talking about integrations with analytics and unlocking the value and what you can do with all of your data sources together, which is the topic of today's webinar. Just a quick spiel about InfoTrust for those that may not be familiar with us. We are a measurement strategy partner with lots of certifications across the Google stack, but also outside of just Google Analytics and measurement technologies. A few are listed there. And again, we help organizations across the entire spectrum of online measurement, from strategizing to implementation to activation, but then also compliance, security, architecture, and various other topics within measurement. So for today, we'll be talking about integrations with analytics and your CRM. As far as the agenda and the topics we'll be covering, the first section we want to talk through is just the value and some use cases that other organizations we partnered with have leveraged the integrations with analytics and CRM and what you can do with it really. We'll talk a little bit about best practices in general when you're thinking about integrating systems, specifically around your users and your user database or your CRM with your online measurement and analytics. We'll do a focus discussion on GA360, Google's enterprise analytics measurement platform, and Salesforce, because there's some automatic connections there and some value. And then we'll close with just getting started with unified customer strategy and approaching your integration goals and obtaining some of the value with connecting these tools together. If there's any other topics or questions you have, even that don't fall within this exact agenda, please don't hesitate to drop a note in the chat panel or even after the webinar. We're happy to discuss. But to start it off, we're going to do a quick poll just to kind of gauge what CRM tools the attendees are using. So I'm going to launch this poll, which you should now see on your screen for the GoToWebinar, which it is interactive. So please feel free to select one of these options here for what CRM tools you are using today. We'll give it about a minute. I'll share the results, just high level, the percentages, if you will, based on the attendees on this webinar. The other polls in this webinar are going to be softball questions like this, but there are a few more coming. So thank you in advance for completing those. We'll give it maybe just about 15 more seconds to see if we can get a couple more votes. Over 50%, over 60% of the attendees have voted so far, so majority of the group. Okay, so I think we've gotten the results in from this quick poll. So over half have mentioned Salesforce as the CRM tool, which makes sense since we'll be talking a little bit about that. But the 45% have actually all selected other. So I'd be curious what other CRM tools you're leveraging. Feel free to drop those in the chat panel, and if we have experience, if I have a use case and we have time, I can share a little bit more about those. But generally speaking, we'll be talking about practices across any tool, but then also focus on GA and Salesforce for a portion of the webinar. But thank you for those that replied to the poll. It's very interesting and useful. So I'm going to close the poll and see what happens. I go back to the webinar, which I am struggling to do. There we go. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen again, and we'll continue on to talk about the value of the integration. So when thinking about bringing data together, your CRM and your analytics platform, there's a lot of steps that go into it, but really the outcome is the goal, which is getting that single point of truth. What we've seen when we work with a lot of organizations is data lives in silos or different parts of the business, and it's being leveraged in different ways. More and more, there's a goal to unify that data and see how there can be value bringing it together, what new insights and new actions that we could have when we centralize that all together. And that's really the point of the integration when using analytics and CRM together. That way you can compare metrics side by side and also make actions from it. When bringing this data together and understanding your customer journey before and after their online touch points, that's when you can start to understand what really are your customers interested in and how can you engage them differently to generate a higher ROI. So maybe there's some interactions they have with your teams that are tracked in your CRM system before they actually visit the website, or most likely after they visit the website, which is usually their initial point of discovery or research, but later followed up with conversations with sales folks or in other ways that don't live with a website visit but tracked in your CRM. So this improves attribution, and we'll have a use case shared about how this can close the loop between sales and marketing efforts, where online marketing and then the handoff to offline sales or interactions, this builds the bridge between them. So you can really see what digital activities drove offline or vice versa interactions. Now, ultimately, we want to optimize the customer experience. So tailoring online experience and what they're actually seeing or engaging with on your brand with what they really care for and do offline. That's kind of the holy grail that we want to get to here. And we've seen really sophisticated use cases where bringing in CRM data to personalize online web interactions, really that's one of the values and outcomes that can come with this type of integration. So I wanted to jump immediately to show a simple illustration of what this could look like. Again, this is not the end-all be-all or only report that you can obtain when you connect your CRM systems and offline or customer touchpoints with online web measurement, but it's an example. So it's a starting point. This is from a demo account for this purpose, and I have another example afterwards. But in a B2B mindset where your CRM system is mainly following up on opportunities and closing deals, where your website might be more informational and driving leads. With this integration, and this is an example from Analytics 360 and Salesforce, which we'll talk about more later, the outcome that you can see is something similar to this. And again, it doesn't have to live in GA, it can be in any data visualization tool that you're leveraging. But essentially, you can start to visualize what are the online touch points, online content or engagement that might be occurring with your customers, such as what pages they're seeing, what interactions are they having, and how does that lead into that offline conversion. So when it's all integrated, you can see it in one simple view and begin to understand what are the key areas online that might be driving the most opportunities or closed deals? Or where are people dropping out on either stage? Maybe your digital marketing is performing at a high level, bringing in a lot of leads, but the close afterwards is just not there, and there's an opportunity to share information about your customers' online experience, online interests with the sales team that is actually executing on the deal or discussing and working on building that relationship. So this is the view from the analytics side, but you can, with the integration, CRM and analytics, it's a two-way passing of information. So not just in analytics, what are the offline touch points and events to visualize in a journey, but also all this data around your users, their interactions, their pages that they're viewing, the events that they're engaging with, the downloads or what have you, push that into your CRM system and see it within your customer records and within those opportunities. Again, for your sales team to have more personalized conversations with your customers. Another example is maybe more on the B2C side, though it's still people-to-people interactions. But this example is showing, online engagement with e-commerce purchases included, but then potentially offline or through your CRM system, you might be tracking how many refunds or canceled orders or repeat purchases that happen through sales team efforts of upselling and reselling or what have you. So you can also have a visual that brings this data together, both the online interactions, offline, all together. And really what I want to call out here is the opportunity, once you have this in place with any analytics tool, even or especially with Google Analytics, you can start to build segments of users based on both types of interactions and either target them offline with media or on-site with your A/B testing, experimentation, and personalization tool as well. So I've just been notified that there might be some background scratching noise. So let me know if this is better. I'm going to try to move the microphone a little less, but thank you for letting me know about that as well. But anywho, so I wanted to show some immediate examples of once the integration is in place, what are some outcomes? And the most basic level, such as this view of the customer journey, just in a few simple steps, but also the application of this data, how you can start to retarget and group users and better understand online where you can market better, but also offline how your sales reps and your CRM team can engage them on a more personalized level. And you don't have to just take my word for it. There are some example case studies that we have and that many other organizations have around the value of bringing this all together. And one success story that I do want to talk about is with Pelican Waters. This organization has online website and interactions that customers can come on and even purchase directly. It's e-commerce, but most of their customers come to research water purification systems and water tanks and really large items, but then want more information, want to work with a sales rep to really make sure it's the right product for them, for their business, for their home, what have you. So a lot of interactions happen offline after that initial digital touch point or website engagement. And the challenge initially with Pelican Waters is that there was a disconnect between that digital marketing, digital interaction, website visit from media and advertising that ultimately led to a sales rep closing the deal and tracked only in Salesforce or their CRM system. But by bringing this data together, we can now not only close the loop between all interactions, but we can see the ROI for paid advertising is much higher because of those offline orders that previously never had any connectivity to the online digital media that was actually being spent or leveraged. So lots of great learnings. The approach that we took here, we'll talk about in a couple slides at a high level, connecting these two systems together. To show you a little bit deeper example of some of the outcomes here, not only can we see at a high level the number of orders tied to channels that might have occurred offline, that completed order, you can also start to segment by campaign and see which individual campaigns or keywords or any type of media that you have tracked in GA, all the way down to that offline conversion, offline purchase as well. So you can drill down a lot further to better understand and optimize your marketing based on those interactions with the integration in place. Another success story, again, more on the B2C side, is connecting for OpticsPlanet.com, their online and offline interactions. And really the goal here is just to see what spend digitally is influencing canceled orders or repeat purchases via the customer sales reps and the call center. So the call center is often engaged when a refund or a canceled order needs to happen, but sometimes they will turn that around and actually make it a different type of sale. Maybe the original sale that needs to be refunded was the wrong product because their product line is enormous. So they actually discuss and see what other products can be relevant. But all of that was tracked separately in the user database and the CRM. But now connecting it back to Google Analytics, we can see visually and action on key stages where customers are engaging online and offline. And really that's only possible by integrating the CRM system. And from here, you can do more, the organization can do more targeting with advertising or on-site, like I mentioned before, and across various different tools that also integrate. The next value that we want to talk about when you have CRM and analytics in place is doing more advanced type of analysis and really further understanding what are your key customers that are going to drive not only short-term revenue, but growth of your business over time. And that's where we would like to always talk about customer lifetime value. And the reason for that is because with analytics and CRM systems integrated, you can, of course, do analysis looking backwards. You know, what were the channels and touch points offline or online that actually drove the most revenue, but which ones in the future will drive continuous growth? And that's where customer lifetime value in a forward-looking concept for projected future value is more key. And the importance here is that you can do customer lifetime value type of analysis just within your analytics online system as well, but there's a missing piece there. Without more attributes around your users and their engagement separately from just what happens on the website, that missing piece makes the customer lifetime value not less valuable, but just it could be even more valuable with more touch points, more signals. What is the probability for them to grow, be active, to buy, and engage with your brand? This is just a quick example of how that could look where, again, we'll talk a little bit further. The connecting key here, user ID, which links CRM and analytics together, and having that breakdown by user, by individual. What is their expected sales, their expected growth when you do this type of modeling, incorporating all of these touch points both from your online analytics system and your CRM systems as well. So those are just a few examples of the value, but to close off that section, we're going to launch another poll. So this poll that I'm going to launch is just to gauge how many of you already have your tools integrated. Not sure. The poll should be launched by now, but if you're joining this webinar and looking to learn more how to improve it or just how to get started because it's not set up today. So we'll spend just about 30 more seconds to wait for this poll to be complete. All right, I see some feedback coming in. Almost at 50% of the attendees voted, so we'll give it just a few more seconds to allow others to pop in here and answer the question. All right, we'll give it just a few more seconds. We've hit around 60% of the attendees, which I think is good for feedback and collecting responses. All right, so looks like very small, less than 10% have CRM and analytics tools integrated today. I'd love to learn in the chat panel or questions panel, you know, based on that integration, are you looking to do more with it or understand the value? But the vast majority, 70%, do not have their tools integrated, and about 23% are uncertain. So, and the numbers keep shifting. I see people are still voting. So great. I mean, we won't talk a little bit, or we won't talk much today about how to check if your tools are integrated or not, but certainly something that we can help explore separately. But as far as them not being integrated, the value, and then how to get started, that's what we'll be discussing here in the next section. So I'm going to close the poll. go back. Hopefully everyone can see my screen again, and on to the next section. So we're going to briefly talk about some best practices. Again, we're not going to get into the technical details of how to connect various systems, because as you saw from the earlier poll, Salesforce might be a popular tool, but it's certainly not the only CRM tool, and every single system has a different process or approach for integration. But there are some commonalities and key best practices to consider with any CRM tool and with any measurement tool. And we'll talk through those here now. So when connecting CRM and customer lifetime value, connecting analytics with CRM and potentially leading to customer lifetime value, the goal here is to capture the data across both systems and make sure there's a bridge between them. So when someone comes to the website, obviously analytics will capture all their website touch points, but as soon as there's data passed from your website to the CRM system, in that CRM system, a key or ID of some kind, not necessarily the user ID, but maybe the session ID, the browser ID that most analytics systems have, can also be stored in the CRM system. Otherwise, if they're logging in or submitting some kind of identifiable info, a user ID captured in your analytics system that can tie to the CRM, that's really what's key. So the approaches for CRM data integration I'm going to spend some time on, it all comes back to having that connecting key or a bridge between your systems. Otherwise, if you have data in your CRM system and then in your analytics system, that there's no way to tie them together. Even if you push data from one system to the other, they won't be connected in any way. You won't have that single view and the entire journey linked together. So what we recommend is, of course, if you have any login capabilities or authentication, tracking user ID in both systems, your analytics and CRM, to be the same. But again, even before login or before authentication, if there's a web session ID or some kind of browser ID that can be captured in your analytics system and in your CRM, that's ideal. That would be the connecting bridge. And from there, there's various ways that you can link the data together. So for most enterprise analytics systems, there's a process for importing data, not just collecting off the website directly or the mobile apps, but actually sending data in via an import file, FTP, or what have you, that would basically stitch user attributes together. But for that, you would need some kind of customer ID, again, tracked in both systems as that bridge. But then from there, you can link and process the uploads. This is one of the most common ways to do it. Another way, though, is similar to the OpticsPlanet case study that we discussed earlier, is actually sending data directly from your CRM system into analytics, or directly from analytics into your CRM, not via an import process, but via a data collection approach that the tools may have. Now, for Google Analytics, as an example, this is what can be considered the measurement protocol. That's the name of the process to send data into GA without having a website visit necessarily. It's basically some custom coding that you can develop to with any internet connected device or platform to trigger events and hits into your analytics system. The key here, as I mentioned before, is you need the browser ID or the web ID that would be tracked in your analytics system to also be included in this hit or in this data that's being sent from your CRM system, so that you can stitch their sessions together. So let's go through an example briefly. If a user comes to a website today, GA is tracking, there's a client ID, which is essentially tied to the browser. It's also tied to a cookie. It's a cookie ID that allows GA to understand it's the same user coming back multiple times with the same browser. That browser ID, as soon as a user fills out a form or logs in, or data is passed from the website to your CRM system, that same browser ID that analytics uses for reporting should also be sent into your CRM system. So then later, if your sales team or someone is engaging with the customer, updating their information in the CRM, at the time they're updating maybe the opportunity or the lead status, or some engagement with that customer, the data can be sent about that customer into GA using the measurement protocol, but it would require that client ID or that web session ID to stitch that interaction data offline with the online interactions as well. So hopefully that makes sense. Taking that outside of just Google Analytics, however, other analytics platforms allow data collection, not just via import or on-site, but to be sent directly in through their various different methods. The takeaway here is to make sure you have a bridge that can connect those online sessions with your offline touchpoints as well. Few other, and by now you probably have read the slide, but what's not really recommended, but I have to include in here is a possibility to add the analytics measurement and tracking directly into your CRM system, so that instead of trying to send data in via an import or some kind of collection process, you actually have your JavaScript deployed on the CRM. This is probably the most challenging because to do that, you would still need the web ID, client ID, browser ID, whatever the analytics system uses, stored in your CRM and included in almost overriding the JavaScript normal tracking that the analytics tag would do, and deployed on the CRM, so that it looks like it's the same user still engaging, just maybe on a different platform. But from there, you can stitch, anytime there's an update made to the CRM about a user, that data can again flow into your analytics system. Now, one thing that I am showcasing here is that these options are primarily one way, getting data from your CRM into your analytics platform, but the concept still applies if you have that connecting key, such as a customer ID or web session ID or what have you in both systems. Exporting data out of your analytics platform, which almost all platforms allow, into a format that your CRM will accept, and then processing that upload, it's the same process as well. And we'll talk in the next few slides how Salesforce and GA can automate some of that process. Lastly, and a growing trend and popular approach is dumping everything into some kind of database or cloud-based data warehouse, stitching it all there where possible with connecting IDs like I mentioned before, and then processing or passing that back into any system. So exporting data out of your analytics and out of your CRM into one place external to both, merging and transforming the data and cleaning it, and then shooting it back into both tools. That's also a possibility, without getting into the technical depth there. This has been one of the more popular recent approaches because it allows, beyond just CRM to analytics, you can incorporate any other database, again, and that's where data lakes and data fabric and all these buzzwords are coming about, but the value is the same. Connecting data sources so that you can unlock and activate it in your marketing, on-site personalization, or just better understanding of the customer journey. So a simplified version of my example and kind of transitioning to Google Analytics specifically, I mentioned that when a user comes to the site, Google IDs, CRM IDs are captured both at the same time. CRM data is stored in the CRM system, but then brought into Google Analytics either via data import or the other methods, and then GA or Google themselves will do the stitching and processing so you can leverage it as well. So this is a little bit more simplified version if you're interested in the data import process and you're using Google Analytics specifically. For GA and the entire Google Marketing Platform, the value with this process basically unlocks the rest of the technology. There's auto integrations, as many of you I'm sure know, between Google Analytics, Google AdWords, the previously known as campaign double-click products like Display and Video 360, Campaign Manager. But when you incorporate your CRM, such as Salesforce, data can flow even further and power on-site personalization, experimentation, as well as remarketing. So this is where that can plug in as well, where Analytics 360 is kind of the core. Your Analytics enterprise system, in our opinion, should be the center where all data flows through to power and activate in other areas. Okay, so let's go a little bit deeper on the Salesforce and Google Analytics integration specifically. So we have some information here around how this works and the components, but in short, there are two modules within Salesforce, the Salesforce Sales Cloud and Salesforce Marketing Cloud, that can automatically integrate with Google Analytics 360. So these both do not exist for Google Analytics free version. It's possible to integrate Salesforce Sales Cloud and potentially Marketing Cloud with Google Analytics free with custom coding. But the value with this integration is that Google and Salesforce support it. They built it. It's really an easy interface setup if you have access to both systems, and then it's maintained and processed entirely by Salesforce and Google based on changes that you make within Salesforce and your CRM system or the data that's collected in GA. With Sales Cloud, it is a one-way processing of data where there's some prerequisites here to make sure that Salesforce Sales Cloud and individual customer or lead records and opportunity records have that client ID that I mentioned before stored. But as users, or sorry, as your team changes or updates the lead objects or the opportunity objects within Salesforce Sales Cloud, those events and those changes tied to that individual will be sent into GA, such as offline conversion events or product attributes if they're completing a purchase offline with your sales team. To get the data back from GA into Sales Cloud, that's again where you can leverage the exporting capabilities of GA, format the data and upload to Salesforce as well. But that's not part of the auto integration built and supported by GA and Salesforce. However, the other option or capability here is Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So this is primarily used as an email marketing system, can also include SMS systems, but it's a Salesforce's way to engage customers at scale. So a lot of B2C organizations may use this email marketing platform called Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And this is a two-way integration where marketing event data such as email sent, opened, and various other metrics are passed into GA. But then also within Google Analytics, if you're building audiences or segments, you can also pass that into Salesforce, customize your marketing, customize the emails that you're sending with the Journey Builder for only a specific group of users based on their web interactions that Salesforce Marketing Cloud might not know or have out of the box, but GA may if you have event tracking, goals, and conversions, etc. Thinking back to the previous examples, if you have any kind of funnels built to show where customers are abandoning, how far they're going in the customer journey, and you want to re-engage some of those customers that may have dropped off checkout steps, let's say, you can leverage Google Analytics funnel reports and segment and audience capabilities, pass it to Marketing Cloud, and then target them with specific messaging in that way. So that's really the value with this second integration here for deeper reporting, but also actionability. So I walked through the example before, but so you have it in the slides and the recording. This is a step-by-step breakdown of the key requirements to get Salesforce Sales Cloud and Analytics 360 integration enabled. So the work up front is to make sure that when a lead submits a form, Google identified the client ID is passed into Salesforce with that record. Again, from there, the setup is all in Google Analytics and Salesforce interface to say which changes along the customer journey within Salesforce would trigger data to be sent back into GA. And then from there, you can activate in AdWords, DoubleClick, and other platforms for remarketing. So this is an example of what the segment builder in GA looks like. This is very straightforward, but you can see now you can start to segment with this integration in place based on changes to their CRM record based on their offline interactions, and then remarket them accordingly. The last line in this section, I wanted to talk a little bit about BigQuery, and again, that last approach that I mentioned of bringing CRM and analytics and other data sources together using cloud or a data warehouse approach. With Google Analytics 360, you, at the moment, though this may be changing, can get a credit to BigQuery, Google's data warehouse solution. There's an auto integration between GA360 and BigQuery to automatically export all unsampled data on a regular basis, on a daily basis, or even more frequent. So the reason I'm bringing up this approach is because this is one way to at least make some of the process easier if your analytics tool plugs in directly to a data warehouse tool and that vendor supports and maintains the data dump, if you will, from analytics into the data warehouse. That's a good solution to at least ensure that that process is taken care of. Then you would just need to download on a regular basis or export from your CRM system all that data that you want to link to your analytics system to power that integration and then pass it back in. So I wanted to just drop in here that, for those that may not know, BigQuery and Google Analytics, they have an auto integration with GA360. There's a credit currently available that might be changing in the future, but that is an option to use. Okay, so to round this out, we're going to talk just a little bit about getting started with a unified customer strategy. And admittedly, my colleague Andy Gibson did lead a webinar on this topic, I think a week or two ago, where he goes much deeper into defining your customer strategy, developing a single customer view, the value there. And really, it starts with CRM and analytics integration. But really, with the goals of obtaining a single customer view, not only will you be able to understand customers across all of their touch points, you can begin to see and activate, engaging them more on a personal level across their entire journey. So a single customer view basically means seeing what they're doing to begin to learn about your brand once they engage with your brand or website or digital platforms, and then how to continuously re-engage them and interact. So the purpose of me putting this in here is just to mention that CRM and analytics integration is a building block to getting to that single customer view, unified customer strategy, and really the thought process that we encourage all of our customers to start going towards is thinking about the customer instead of thinking about spend and sessions and conversions, because ultimately it ties back to people, to your customers. So thinking about that customer view and how the integration could work is ideal, especially when you're looking at CRM and analytics together. Wanted to throw in here just an example for thinking ahead. When you have the process and all of your tools integrated, you can have a flow or marketing powered in this way. So this is similar to the previous one, focusing on the Google platforms and how they integrate. But this is, again, another way to look at the customer journey, seeing how they may become aware of your brand, coming to your website, the data that needs to be captured both in your backend CRM systems, user databases, as well as your analytics systems, and connecting that together so you can power various touch points. So this is, I like to show this as kind of one of our closing slides to say this is the end goal, is to be able to have that end-to-end journey and visibility of your customer touch points, because it can really lead to a lot of value and more personalized connection with your customers. So how to get started or what to think through. Hopefully the webinar up to this point gave you some of the tactical or technical things to consider, such as having that unifying key between your systems, ensuring that the IDs are passed and collected in your CRM and analytics. But really the process to go through is like any other project, where understanding who are the stakeholders. For many organizations we've worked with, their analytics digital team, their paid media team, and their CRM customer team are different. They're multiple teams. We're seeing a trend, and we hope this is the case with your organization, that there's more data sharing between them, and understanding that connecting efforts can lead to more value, more growth, and ultimately more loyalty from your customers. So aligning those stakeholders, this type of project, CRM and analytics, doesn't only focus on platforms, but it really relies on bringing these teams together, making sure there's a shared goal around getting your customer single view. But then the rest of the steps is like any other project, allocating your team, communicating across the organization, testing and training. Really, that's how you can successfully deploy this type of integration. And the way we look at it when we look with or work with partners, a little shameless plug here, we try to look at the journey that we have with our partners and clients. So CRM integration with analytics, that tends to be later on in the stage once you have a really strong data governance and architecture in place for digital collection, as well as your CRM processes. So if today your CRM processes are very ad hoc, your sales teams are updating however they want, there's no single architecture and organized way to keep customer data both in your CRM or your analytics system, that's really where you want to start. Before you can connect them and act on them, you need to make sure that the architectures are designed in a way that you can connect them. So in the examples that we shared before between Pelican Water, OpticsPlanet, and other customers, there is a period of time where we need to make sure the data is collected well, organized well, that connecting key like user ID or client ID is prevalent in both systems, then integrate them, activate them, do customer lifetime value at that point. So it is a journey to keep in mind, and there is a starting point to ensure you have the foundations in place to be able to do this. Really, that's all for the topic around CRM and analytics integration. So thank you so much for joining. I do want to point out that we have some workshops coming up. So another shameless plug, we have a data governance workshop across 3 major US cities. So if you're near or around or in these various cities, feel free to check out our data governance workshops coming up. You can check that out on our website. We can maybe post that in the chat panel or maybe in the follow-up email. Check out our website as well for more information. And that's all around making sure you have the right data governance or data collection and process in place to avoid fees from regulations, but also address measurement changes with browsers and how data collection and online measurement is actually going to work in the future. So there's a workshop to make sure you are prepared and ready. And then we also have a few upcoming events to build on this topic. Getting started with Google Optimize for testing, personalization, how it plugs into all of your other analytics initiatives and CRM activities. And then going even further on the cloud front, where I touched on a little bit and mentioned some about BigQuery and how that can be used to integrate your data sources. But the team, our data science and discovery team, will go even further to talk about how you can create that, some things to keep in mind, and some technical takeaways for your team as well. So check out those events coming up. And to close, we will launch the poll, and then I will check if there are any pertinent questions or chat panel items that I need to respond to. So let me go ahead and launch this poll. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining. If you have any further questions, I will switch to the next slide that has my email, but you can always contact us via our website. But for now, I'll leave this poll here for a minute or two, and then I'll switch back to my email to close out the webinar. So again, thanks so much for joining. If you do drop off and you don't have any more questions, but hope you join our future sessions. Okay, cool. So while we're waiting for the poll to get a little bit more replies, I do see Dynamics 365 is a CRM system used by a couple of attendees. Interesting. I'd love to learn more. I think some of our team may have worked with that before, but personally, I'd love to learn more about that tool and what all it does, and if you're already integrating with analytics. So thank you for that feedback. And I think there's only one question so far. Interested to know what is the delta between what are you describing and having best practice measurement code from HubSpot or similar CRM. So I'll repeat this question and answer it now for those that are hanging around. The question that came in is, what is the delta between what we've described for integrating different systems, I believe, and having best possible measurement code from a HubSpot or similar CRM? So if I understand the question correctly, it's basically, what is the value of having an analytics measurement platform and CRM separately and integrating them versus just having a really robust implementation of a CRM that collects all of the interactions and data points, if you will, that a normal measurement tool like Google Analytics would have? It's a good question. I don't have an exact answer to what is the delta or scientific count, but really it depends on your business. Most businesses that and organizations we've worked with, they leverage their analytics platform for marketing and for on-site updates to features or content. So they're already very invested and have a very well deployed measurement platform. And between multiple teams and markets and brands or site owners, they've constructed the architecture, or they're working to, so that online data is easy, visible, and accessible among all to make data-driven decisions. CRM systems are usually very focused teams that work directly with customers or follow up with them. And oftentimes that data is a lot more protected, if you will, and proprietary, as well as identifiable, because CRM systems by design are user databases with user information. So the value that we have seen is by having a measurement tool that is collecting online and media interactions for many teams to analyze and leverage, but then having a CRM integrated and maybe not pulling in all your CRM data, but just the ones that are key indicators of the customer journey and characteristics that are not PII. Pulling that into analytics not only gives more visibility to the CRM related data points about your customers without giving access to the CRM, but it also makes sure that there's some protections on what data is getting passed between the two. So collecting it all in your CRM, again, depends on your business. If it's a smaller business or you have open access to the CRM platform for all of your team members, having a more robust implementation there could work. We just see with measurement platforms that are a lot more prevalent and widely deployed. So connecting that with the CRM has been the approach that we've typically recommended. So hopefully that answers the question. I think there's a follow-up. Delta meaning, why should I go further than just installing HubSpot code and letting HubSpot do everything it does? So hopefully my explanation answered that. Again, we've seen that the reporting capabilities within enterprise analytics tools are more robust than a HubSpot or CRM system because they focus on user attributes, not so much things like interactions that they're doing on the site or product details or session details. All the other value points that come with an enterprise analytics tool, you can still have that, but just connect and overlay your CRM system. Another question, these are good. What is the Google Analytics or Google Analytics 360 integration like when integrated with HubSpot? Any examples? So it's a good question, and I guess maybe to take a step back, Google Analytics can integrate with any CRM system. The Salesforce example is just what Google's placed their bet on building the auto integration for users. But absolutely with HubSpot, just like many other CRM systems, it can be designed in a way that does pass data back and forth between analytics and HubSpot. What we've seen with HubSpot is that it's very flexible and easy to create new fields and modify the forms so that the connecting key, which is again most critical with Google Analytics, the client ID, passing that into a hidden form field with HubSpot, I think they're called smart forms, where you can update them and it applies to all forms, and then capturing that into HubSpot so that you have that bridge. The exporting capabilities with HubSpot and the HubSpot API or with Google Analytics and the Google Analytics API, it makes it really, really easy. So that's one thing. We actually use HubSpot a lot at our organization, and the APIs and data extraction and importing capabilities is really flexible. So we see HubSpot as one of the easier CRM platforms to integrate, similar to Salesforce or some of the more popular, widely used tools because of the support that the vendors provide with the API and capabilities there. So don't know if I have a specific example to share, but I will say that it's more straightforward than, let's say, a custom-built CRM system or one that's not quite as popular, or a CRM. It's just an add-on to the core platform, which might be an email marketing system that's not really designed for integrations with other tools. But HubSpot certainly is in a good place. So hope that answers that question. It's good. Well, before I'm going to close the poll. So thank you for those that have replied. And I'm going to just go to the last slide, which shows my email in case there are any other questions. But I'll hang around for maybe 2 more minutes in case there's any other comments or questions. But thank you so much for joining. Feel free to take my email, shoot me a note if you have any further questions or discussions. And we hope to see you on a future event. So thanks again for everyone for joining.